All right, folks. Hello and welcome to the Free Associates. That's right, folks. The Free Associates. The freedom to associate with any idea or anything that comes our way. To just keep our minds open, to not play expert, to be amateurs, and to be broad in general, but also to leave and enter the conversation undecided as we go along the way. To not fall prey to dogma or anything like that, and just try to stay open. It's good to be open. We certainly, Waylon and I are not deciding anything today. I don't think, although sometimes he skates the line, I'm telling you, sometimes he's an expert, and that is worrisome. It's not that we don't believe in experts. We want to be really clear. Experts can be awesome and excellent, and we need them more than ever. But what we're going to do in this Free Associates is basically go through a political article. The link is in the description of this piece. We're just tackling the first one. Okay, we're just going to tackle the first one today. And these are basically predictions. They're predictions, like what's going to happen after this is all said and done. What's the world going to be? How's the world going to be different after this than before? Because, one of the things on the Free Associates, we're not particularly interested in the minutiae of politics or anything like that. But we are interested in what's possible. And, Waylon and I had a conversation yesterday about why does the news get fixated on this and this and this? And he made a really good point, but we don't have to do that. We can actually broaden our horizons and just question, sociologically, where could this go? What opportunities? I have the feeling that Waylon and I have a lot of ideas in common on this issue, and there's other things that we're just not going to agree on. Now, today we actually have a couple of guests that we're really excited to bring on. A wunderkind, Elena Frogameni, who's been on the Free Associates before. And by the way, before I forget, the Free Associates, it's the freeassociates.us. Okay, that's our website, the freeassociates.us. And you can get our podcast there. You can get anything you want there. That's where to find us. We are a radio show on WMUA Amherst. We're not able to access the campus center, so we are doing this remotely, although we rebroadcast this the next day at noon. So if you're listening to WMUA Amherst and you're hearing this, it's a rebroadcast. So we have Elena Frogameni, who's going to join us in a little bit, and we have my buddy Gibbs Life, who's going to join us from Brooklyn, New York, and we're going to look at a short piece, which we'll get to in a minute, about it's basically arguing that after this is all said and done, social distance is going to become an issue. Now, Waylon, do you have an object for me? Just so everyone knows, one of the things we do is we free associate. We free associate on usually drawings. I'm an expert. Waylon is a cheater. He's a ball dropper. Okay, yes.
First.
Okay. Yeah.
I can see the chat. I wanted to let you do your whole spiel. Notice I didn't interrupt you. I didn't interrupt you.
Fair enough. Are you looking at the Ethernet?
See the chat on the live stream. You have to hide the chat.
Okay. Is that the Zoom chat?
The Zoom chat.
Okay. I don't know why.
This is old man Cody time. This is troubleshooting old man Cody.
Yeah, but old man Cody figures stuff out that young man Waylon can't figure out,
Tune in next time when we call up Comcast.
All right. Fair enough. I was wondering about that, Waylon. So
what packets are?
I'm not defensive. Who figured out the audio? I figured out the audio. You messed up the audio and I figured it out. Come on. I'm a weird combination of Luddite old man and then really sharp at times because I pay attention. Now, do you have an object I can free associate on or a drawing? Because that's part of what we do here. I have one for you later. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I don't have anything on me, but I'm going to. I have something near me.
Come on, man. Okay, you ready? 3, 2, 1, boom. Universal remotes in the hotel room. Got 5 or 6 of them in my lap, cannot figure it out, filled with rage for the over-designed American system, filled with rage that I can't access my entertainment, floating down into the parking lot and past the pool, the loud noises of the chain link fence and the bottles dropping on the other side of the street, Malone, nowhere, lost. Boom, 89.9%, almost an A-, free association, yes?
Your first word was universal remote.
Oh, you're right. That's not allowed, folks. You're not supposed to describe. Free association is not description. Free association is not description. I'm back. You hear me, Waylon?
There we go.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I think part of my like free association, I've been kind of dropping the ball a little bit, is that I'm like overwhelmed by the.
I know you're the puppet master over there. You got a whole bunch of strings going on.
I just, it's amazing this is even working. And we did have trouble. If you guys were trying to tune in live on our free associates page, that's a Facebook problem. I don't know if anyone knows the answer to that, but basically when you schedule it live, it says it's starting and it gets stuck. It gets stuck pushing it out on live. So it wasn't, Waylon was like, well, you're not pushing the right button, but that was, I assure you that wasn't the right thing. Now, interesting question here. I told people yesterday that there's a way to make yourself look good on Zoom. And I think I unchecked it, but yeah, I unchecked it. So I actually do look good here because if I touch up my appearance, I even look better. But
he took the loofahs to his face yesterday. He did some sanding work.
I did too. I have sanding work. I had plenty of stuff. My beautiful wife, Robin, went to Lowe's and she couldn't really get in because they really want you to be specific about what you need, which I totally understand.
Wait. Now, they told her that she couldn't go in because she didn't have a specific thing?
Yeah, they're kind of like, what's the list of supplies that you're looking for? They don't want people like bopping around Lowe's. Okay, so I'm glad I'm telling you this. All right.
That is nuts.
I don't know. I mean, listen.
What happens if you had to go in there? So say it's another store, you had to get a personal object, or personal item. I don't like that at all.
Well,
in fact, today I was listening to Planet Money, great show. But actually, it was This American Life. I'm sorry, but there was a woman was telling her account of how things are getting back to normal in China, and one of the things that has been happening is in her province, she has to, whenever she goes into a building, she scans a QR code. She gives the QR code of where she is, and the person that is at the door or whatever can see where she's been geographically on a map. So all of a sudden, so I'm just like,
well, they can do that anyway with Google, man. You've listened to those podcasts.
It's not the point of if they can do it. It's the implementation of it on a national level.
Get used to it. Get used to it.
My mind.
Well, we had an episode a long while back about privacy. Do you remember that when I totally smacked you down? And you were like, I don't care if they follow me because I'm not doing anything bad.
Devil's advocate, bro.
Devil's advocate. That's how you get out of everything. All right, listen, would you text Elena and have her join our Zoom again? She's been very patient over there.
Watching. Hey, Andrea, how's it going?
Yeah, but there is a delay there. So,
oh, yeah.
So let her know that we'd really love to have her pop in.
Cool. Oh, all right. Let's rock.
Yeah, okay, bring her in, and then I want to read it to everybody what the first part is. I'm kind of like still balancing stuff here a little bit. Okay, she'll come in just a minute. Now, just for our listeners or our viewers, Politico does this great series often where they'll ask 35 thinkers about, well, where do you think this is going? What's the long-term impact? This is what we're interested in on the Free Associates. We're not really interested in why it happened or how it's been bungled or anything like that. There's plenty of shows that are going to talk to you about that. And I think it's useful. Oh, here's Elena. That's great. So let's welcome her.
Continue that thought.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I just think we have a focus on the show. The focus is in the future. Our focus is on future thinking. It's not on critique. Wouldn't you agree with that, Waylon?
Yeah, I would say that. I think that I like to get into the not the specifics of what happened, but where we could be going with open-ended.
That's right. And that's what I'm saying. Like that's the specialty of the Free Associates, non-expert, just the kind of open discussion about where could this go. Elena, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, we're good. Good. Yeah. Good to see you. Now you're
speaking of non-experts, she's a non-expert at setting up her background. We can just see her coats and
it's fine. It's
sorry, not everybody has the money to create their own virtual studio.
Not everybody has the $30 I can shovel out for Catan back here.
I've been noticing that Catan set. I don't even know what that is. What is it?
I know. It's a board game. Coincidentally, I just put it out. I mean, a couple of them, Pandemic, Catan, but it's about sharing of resources, and you have to like barter. So I got a brick. Do you have a hay? I have a hay. Do you have a sheep? And so things can get hyped resource wise.
Okay, good, good. Um, so Elena, how you doing? You're doing stuff from home, aren't you?
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. It's pretty awful.
Yeah. So Elena,
Online,
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but let the viewers know who you are and where you are going to school and what your situation is right now, if you don't mind.
yeah, so I am my sophomore year at Mount Holyoke College. I graduated from Northampton High School in 2018. I'm a politics major there, and I moved back home. I'm in my third week back at home now. School has been canceled. Well, classes are still going on, but we're not allowed on campus for the rest of the semester. And we're doing remote learning mostly through Zoom.
Now, Elena, can I ask you, as nice as it's to see you, Waylon, do you think it would help her audio if she took her video off?
I can do that.
Let's try that, just because, Waylon, you hearing that it's coming in a little bit crunchy? Am I wrong?
Yeah, but
Okay.
I
Well,
don't know
Elena,
like the
Is that
bandwidth is gonna change that, but
Elena, talk to us for a second.
hi? Is that better?
It is better, isn't it, Waylon? Okay, so I apologize, Elena, but I think that I think in the long run it'll serve our conversation better. So, how is it doing these online courses? You're on the front lines of this transition. What is it like for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, like, I think that we're exhibiting like one of the principal challenges right now, which is like internet connectivity at all. I'm in a situation where I do not have like good wireless connectivity at my house whatsoever. And so that has been a constant struggle. And, I am even like more privileged compared to some of my other classmates who, as much as I don't have the capacity for high speed internet at my house, I have classmates who don't have computers. I have classmates who don't have wireless connectivity at all. So as much as mine is slow and prevents Zoom video, like I'm grateful that it even works whatsoever.
Yeah,
So that's kind of the biggest challenge. I think the other hard part, right, is like my professors are adapting along with me. A lot of my professors have small children they're taking care of, who have multiple classes to manage. So it's really piecemeal. It's really hard to deal with, and then I think we even learned this through doing this today. Like conversations over Zoom are not what they are in person.
yeah. Well, okay, so that's a great segue, Elena. Can I just quickly read? Now we're tackling the first of these Politico series, and it's called "The Personal Becomes Dangerous." It's by Deborah Tannen. She's a professor of linguistics at Georgetown, and she's the author of "You're the Only One I Can Tell: Inside the Language of Women's Friendship." She writes, "On 9/11, Americans discovered we are vulnerable to calamities we thought only happened in distant lands. The financial crisis told us we can also suffer calamities of past eras, like the economic meltdown of the Great Depression. Now, the 1918 flu pandemic is suddenly a specter in our lives. This loss of innocence or complacency is a new way of being in the world that we can expect to change our doing in the world. We now know that touching things, being with other people, breathing the air in an enclosed space can be risky. How quickly that awareness recedes will be different for different people, but it can never vanish completely for anyone who lives or lived through this year. It could become second nature to recoil from shaking hands or touching our faces, and we might all find we can't stop washing our hands. That's not going to happen for me, but the comfort of being in the presence of others might be replaced by a greater comfort with absence, especially with those we don't know intimately. Instead of asking, is there a reason to do this online? We'll be asking, is there any good reason to do this in person? And might need to be reminded and convinced that there is. Unfortunately, if unintendedly, those with easy access to broadband will be further disadvantaged, which is what you were talking about, Elena. The paradox of online communication will be ratcheted up. It creates more distance, yes, but also more connection as we communicate more often with people who are physically farther and farther away from us and who feel safer to us because of that distance. Okay. So, Elena, you definitely touched on that. And I think in a couple of ways. I know Waylon was not happy with this piece, but let's go to Elena first. What do you think? Do you think this is a fair prediction of the future, that we're actually like not going to be, like by default, we're going to move away from each other physically? Or how do you feel about that?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thought that came to mind when I was reading this piece about kind of generational shifts in how we perceive space, institutions, relations to people, was that particularly for my generation, like there has been a shift going on for longer than just this moment about how we perceive being in physical spaces with other people. I think about that particularly in terms of mass shootings in this country. So for my generation specifically, like since Sandy Hook, like it is fearful to be in school. It's fearful to be at concerts. It's fearful to, you know, sometimes take a walk in certain spaces. So I think that there is like a larger, as we move into this time, there's a lot of things that are going on for my generation and thinking about space and how we act in it. I also think that I have many friends who are still hanging out with people, and that's not a fear or concern for them. Me, myself, I have not been within 10 feet of anyone who's not in my immediate family in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So there's just a huge difference in how people my age are perceiving this. But then I also look at industry, right? My dad works in the music industry. He really thinks that concerts will not be happening through the summer. So and I think even like restaurants, there's talk that maybe like we will be more focused on having the space between us so that their seating capacity might need to be reduced. How closely do we pack in at things like concerts or restaurants or classrooms? So I think that there could be some big changes coming.
Oh, you know, that's really smart. But can I just put a thumbtack in the first part of what you said? And then I want to hear from Waylon, which is, you know, mass shootings. That's a good example of like some really horrendous stuff that's happened. You think of Las Vegas, they still don't know why that guy was shooting at people. And that did not stop people from going to concerts though. Right? Am I right about that?
I think there's a difference, right? Like I think that you can categorize things as like what actions are people taking, and then you can talk about how things are impacting people's thought processes. So as much as nobody my age stopped going to school, nobody my age stopped going to concerts, but there are different thought processes that happen in relation to this. So, right, like do I think that COVID-19 and this pandemic will impact people's thoughts? Yes. As I think mass shootings did, as I think 9/11 did.
Yeah.
I think it's yet to be seen if that's how much it's going to have an impact on public policy and how close we can be to each other in our institutions.
Yeah, well, and you know, you start talking about it that way, they start stacking up. Waylon, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I said it yesterday. I don't buy it, and this is why I don't buy it. Is because whenever we talk about things that are going to drastically change the trajectory of our culture and society, it needs to be fundamentally experienced by everyone. We are all experiencing the shutdown of this, that, and the other thing, but what I want to go back to is the thing that people are experiencing is the negative aspects of a shutdown economy. And that is not necessarily on the same parallel with coronavirus and experiencing what it's truly like to get sick. And so when you look at things that are really going to make a fundamental impact and that people will absolutely remember, it's proximity and geography and cultural geography and time. And I think that as we get away from this, people are going to forget. One, they're going to say, why did we, and I'm not saying this is right, but they're going to say, why did we, it's a lose-lose situation for people thinking about an overreaction to what's going on. Because if we flatten the curve with all the preventative, the things that we've done preventatively, a lot of people are not going to experience what it's truly like to get the virus. And that's a good thing, but they haven't experienced themselves what it's like to get the virus. I think we have over 200,000 people that have been infected, but we are a land of 330 million people. So if you or your loved one doesn't immediately get it, the only thing that you're going to remember is a shutdown economy. And so if we're successful in all this because of the social distancing and the preventative things that we're doing, it's, well, didn't we overreact and shut down our economy? If we're on the other side and everybody gets it, then there's going to be bigger fish to fry too. But I think that what's going to happen is we're going to come out the other side of this with several hundreds of thousands of people that get infected, but there's going to be a lot of people, myself included, right at this moment, probably all three of you, that didn't actually see it face up in your face in really close to what we're talking about. And you're going to go on your merry way and go, remember that time that we had to stay at home and not go outside? Yeah, wasn't that a doozy? We're going to have policies that are going to be in place where, just like with mass shootings or bombing raids of World War II, that the kids are going to laugh at, like, oh my God, can I still, like, how many times have you heard when we go into a stay in place at school, it's like, they're not making fun of it, but they're like, can I please still work? I have to do this, because they've never been introduced to this in a really intimate manner. Not that I would ever want that to happen, but you're going to see us distance in our memory from everything that's going to go on. Everything's going to go back to normal is my guess. How long that is, I don't know.
I think that's going to be a theme for you, Waylon, just from like the brief talks that we've had.
Oh, yeah, sure.
It's possible. It's possible 6 months from now that if we look at some historical precedent, I think after the Black Death, I don't know. I would like to look at, like, how do people come back from plagues? Like, what's the actual history there? What do you think of what he's saying, Elena?
So I disagree on a couple levels. I think
Elena
first,
disagrees with me?
And I know. And I do think Jeremy agrees with me on this. Like, there will be public policy changes, just like public policy changes after 9/11 in terms of airport screenings, just as public policy changes that, well, I hope we would have seen more of after mass shootings. There will be public policy changes. That is, I truly believe that. I'm not sure how they will work. I'm not sure what they will be, but there will be
policy changes. Just to interject one thing too, and when you have, I agree with you 100%, but when you have successful policy changes, that is going to, that's actually helping my side of people are going to forget, because you fix the problem. You start creating larger centers. You start having a surplus of ventilators. You start creating means where it's easier for people to forget.
Well, and also, that's a good point. Not just to forget, but to imagine that we could power through the next one. If we had 50,000 power ventilators in Massachusetts, we could say, well, this time we're just going to stay at work, because the death rate's going to be so small, actually. It's going to be unpleasant, but it's going to be so small. I mean, that's the other thing that we should look at. I think that September 11th is a really good example of, the numbers are Waylon, do you want to go in there? You can.
No, I was just going to have Elena finish that.
So my other point is this idea, right, of like mass, like a situation that causes a large number of people some form of trauma. And I think that, like, trauma can be thought of in two different ways, right? There's like trauma, like a directly traumatic experience. And I think that's what Jeremy's talking about when he says directly getting the virus. Like, that is a horrifically traumatic experience that not everyone in this country will have, thank God. But there is this sort of trauma that we're all experiencing that I do think, for those, maybe not small children, but for those, including myself, who are aware and cognizant of what's happening, I don't think that I will ever open another doorknob without using my sleeve. There are just little behaviors that, like,
I think you will. Really?
I don't think I will. And I think this is different too, right? I am in a high risk category. I have asthma. I am someone who would, in all likelihood, be on a ventilator if I had this. I am in a high risk category. So perhaps the way that I perceive this and the way that my family perceives this is a little bit different than other families. But I think that the way week after week, my brain and my body are training themselves to open doorknobs with my shirt sleeve, to wash my hands for a full 20 seconds, which in all honesty, I don't think I ever did before. I don't think I think those behaviors that we're all experiencing, ideally, are going to get stuck a little bit. And maybe that's a good thing.
Well, it's not all bad. Washing your hands. They've been telling us for years. I mean, before COVID hit the schools or hit us, it actually hasn't really hit us. That it is coming. It looks like we're gonna peak in mid-April. So it's here. I don't want to minimize that. But kids were sick all year at school, and I was sick all year at school, and a lot of antibiotics weren't working. And, the washing the hands thing is important. If I could just weigh in a little bit, I lived in New York on September 11th. So I kind of lived through that, I was in Brooklyn at that time, and I remember that. And I remember thinking after September 11th, wow, that's the end in New York. You're not going to see tourists in New York anytime soon, and the real estate market is going to just crash. And the exact opposite happened. I spent 8 years subsequently being a tour guide, and you couldn't find enough tour guides. And the real estate in New York City just went up and up and up. So I do think, if you look at September 11th, if you're there at that moment, on September 16th, you're like, this is over. Like, New York's had a great run since in 1984, and now it's going to be different. And that's just not what happened. And, people got very used to the terrorism thing really fast in New York. Now, it's not the same. But I just want to argue that that's my position, is perhaps somewhere between Whalen and you. I think it has similarities with you guys too, is that it's going to become layered and nuanced. Public policy is going to be brought to bear, but in a year or 2 years, not everyone, but 90% of the people are going to be putting their hands on doorknobs. That's just a guess. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think just adding, I do think that there is something very different about this than right, and I'm not trying to diminish the absolute tragedy of 9/11, but it was a moment to some extent. It fit into a larger context, but we are in a place right now where we don't know when this will end, and in all likelihood, it's going to maybe come back in the fall, maybe come back again in the winter until a vaccine is out. There's an aspect to this current crisis where there's no end in sight. And so I think that that's where I think it'll take so much longer to reintegrate into society in a way that we did before, because how do you do that without getting more people sick? I mean, and I heard Jeremy talk about this earlier, kind of the reintegration in Wuhan and in China. Like, I will be very interested in how that is going, but there are so many reports coming out now that there are new outbreaks happening in China.
It's hard to know. Yeah. And by the way,
thing China says.
Well, if they would be underreporting it anyway.
I do want to say this though too.
Yeah. Okay.
Just the psychology of the human mind is such that we're just like a hard drive. I mean, you had some great analogies yesterday. I loved it about just the fragmentation of the mind and everything. But the human mind is just like a hard drive. If you have 100 things that you're juggling throughout the day, I guarantee you that the coronavirus is going to go into the back of your priorities. Once you have to pick up the kids from daycare, you have to go and get dinner ready, you have to think about that work email. We just don't have the time to, and that's why we kind of never learn from history too. That's the reason why we find ourselves in the same similar situations all the time. It's just because we just don't have the mental capacity to be constantly worried, nor should we. I don't think it's a good idea for everybody to stop touching doorknobs. I don't want that to happen. I don't think obviously wash your hands more. That's a great thing. But I don't want society to fundamentally change because society wasn't fundamentally flawed to begin with. This is an anomaly type situation that we can now learn and live through and learn from, and have policies in place where we can ensure that it hopefully doesn't happen again. But this is how life works.
So Wayland, well, just give me a second. Elena, I want to get you on again, either later this week or early next week, but my second guest is going to come in just a minute. So I just want to thank you for being on, but have the last word at Wayland, please. Just
yeah, I'm gonna hear it through text today. So
now do some damage, and then I'll bring our next guest on. Okay.
No, just my last comment is that, again, just about the uniqueness of this. And I think about it as I watch my mom wash every item of food that she gets from the grocery store. There's not going to be a moment where we get a president or President Trump or whoever on stage saying, here's the moment where you can stop washing your groceries. Like, I don't think that moment is going to happen, which is why I think that these little ramifications will continue on for so long, because I don't see there being a moment where it's victory.
Yeah. Well, Elena, I hope that it is, but I hear you and what you're saying. And I think that depending on how you're impacted and who you are, you're going to have there's going to be a lot of different responses out there. Thanks so much for joining us,
Yeah,
Elena.
thanks, man.
Thank you.
And I want to, you're a free associate. You're one of our greats. And so I want to have you on again soon. Thanks so much.
Love to. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
So she makes a lot of really good points. I think that in a lot of ways, I hope that's not true. I hope that there is some end at some point, but I get it, because when this is happening, I'm like, my two questions are, why didn't this happen before? And why isn't it going to happen again next year? Like, they're going to be eating bats again or something like that. And we're just going to have, this is going to be the same thing next year.
Well, I think there's two things that you got to look at. One, the severity of what's going on. So I think that if you look at swine flu and things like that, and if it wasn't the big impact that it had now, but at the same time, I think that what is going on is that we are so interconnected now that the same, if you take coronavirus right now and put it back into swine flu days. I remember when I was working on a student film at Mount Holyoke College, actually, when swine flu was going around, and there was a girl that came down with it, and we were like, oh wow, that's crazy. And I had known about swine flu, but I didn't know anything to the degree of information or discussion or news coverage that we have now. And I think that the immediacy of information, the interconnectivity of how we all are, and how things can, in the same way that a virus can, is we live in a viral society. And that can just become shared and spread, and also mutated to the form where you have this crazy amount of misinformation as you do as information. So it would have been very interesting to see how we had dealt with the swine flu with the current technology that we have. I think that's pushing some of it, but it's also been able to be an incredibly helpful tool with combating it as well. And the way that we can pass that immediate information in a time where things are constantly changing is a godsend.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you're an optimist, and I think I'm like more of an optimist than a pessimist. I think that, the one thing that we didn't talk about, that you and I talked about yesterday, is there's an economic factor to also people going out. And I did not feel like yesterday you were saying that you felt like people are going to want to re-engage globalism and re-engage that, that's if they have money, people are going to be really hard up. There's a lot of people who are going to be really hard up. And that cycle could get, and I'm not trying to guilt you here. I'm just wondering, there's social distancing that's viral based, and then there's also just I can't afford to go out. I lost.
Well, okay, so those are two. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I agree. I mean, that's the pragmatic situation that we find ourselves in. But remove that economic impact that's had happened. If everything was all settled, and I still think this to a certain degree, the day that the ban is lifted, you're going to see people celebrating in bars and restaurants and everything.
Well,
yeah, that everybody's going to go out and go out like
well, there will be some
victory
people.
party, like it was some
you.
sort of World War II victory party. That's what's going to be. It's not going to be people ease into the system. Everybody's going to be going out.
Well, not everybody.
Well, not everybody, but
not everybody.
You take 10% of the people that are still worried, and 90% of the people are going to be going out.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I'm not sure it's the right thing to do. I mean, people were on spring break during this. There's a cool link, and I can put it on our page later. By the way, you're listening to the Free Associates, either on WMUAM or on Facebook Live. You're seeing us. But
also, I didn't know. I don't know if he's still with us, but Brian Lombardi entered too. Was watching for a while. I would love to hear on a.
Well, I invited Brian
level.
for tomorrow.
Oh,
I don't know if he can do it.
Level, what's going on?
I don't know if he can do it or if it's possible. I just don't know.
That'd be great.
I'm waiting for my buddy Gib to join. Let me just text him again. Now, Gib is not necessarily Zoom proficient necessarily. So I'm just waiting for him. Now, my buddy Gib, just so everyone knows, Gib he's He's in New York, okay? And I'm just gonna like give this to him again, just in case he's having trouble. He's an artist. He's a great artist. He's not like the biggest tech guy, so I'm gonna just try to help him out a little bit. And he's in Brooklyn, so I'm curious what his experience is like. And so we're waiting for Gib, but we do not have him. So we'll just see. We'll just see. Yeah. So yeah, I would like to get Lombardi on too. Like, and I would actually like to get our principal on. I'd like to get Lori on. You know, talk about a tough time to be principal. She's been getting all these phone calls saying, "Why did you turn the high school into a shelter?" She's like, "It's not my job. I don't make those kinds of decisions. That's not like something I decide." And I think that's what people do misunderstand about education, is that education is like, it's top down. You know, we get all this stuff from Malden, Massachusetts, from Dicey, you know, and we're not particularly in control of it, you know?
Yeah. There was a article that I posted on Facebook, I think today, actually, maybe yesterday, but it was the failure of leadership at the soldiers' home. I don't know if you've been.
Oh my God.
That,
yeah,
but,
that's not good.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of different places, and that's why it's so interesting about thinking about leadership and all of this. At what point do you, so you as a leader in certain situations, like a principal, for instance, you're at, you are directly getting orders from your superintendent, but they're getting also, they're in collaboration with the school committee, who's in collaboration with the mayor. So there's a whole bunch of different things going up the line. The thing that I think that happened at the Soldiers' Home, for those that weren't aware of it, I think it's up to 13 people died at the Holyoke Soldiers' Home over the span of the last few weeks. Is that you need to understand when, as a leader, when you need to sound the alarm and call for reinforcements. And I think that was the missing component of the leadership role.
That's
is that
right.
you can't handle, sometimes you can't handle things yourself, and sometimes you just need to, you know, start ringing those alarm bells.
It's a classic error, is that you get in 2 feet of water and you're afraid to let anyone know you got into 2 feet of water, and now you're 12 feet underwater.
Yeah.
So that's really tough. And we're still waiting on my buddy Gib. I'm hoping that he'll be able to join us. I'm not really getting anything back from him right now, but we'll just give him another minute. And if not, we'll just move on. So, Waylon, you're basically saying that you really feel like people are going to go back. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just agree with you. Like, I do think that people are going to go back. Oh, and I wanted to say about, you know, congregating during spring break. There's a cool link of a cell phone. It's this company that tracks cell phones.
Yeah,
Did you see it? And it showed all the phones that were on Fort Lauderdale Beach going back into the country. One interesting thing about the Spanish flu. Now, we, as you mentioned before, we have big advantages over the Spanish flu because the Spanish flu, one of the problems with the Spanish flu is when the soldiers came home from the trenches, right? Because it was actually from Kansas. The Spanish flu was from Kansas, and they were burning horse manure near a base. And that's when the virus jumped to soldiers. And then they were sent to the trenches in France. Now, the trench is the best virus developer in the world because it can kill you fast, but have another person to take over really quickly, right? Because most diseases aren't virulent because they want to spread. But when it comes home, everybody's going to these parades to welcome these people back from the war. And then they went home to their suburbs and they brought the Spanish flu with them. So, like, it was definitely a perfect storm, the Spanish flu. Although this just seems like it's getting worse and worse, quite honestly. But maybe not. My brother also sent me a link that said that basically the peak is going to be mid-April. This was a really reputable place. It was this people that study. It's an institution. April 15th is going to be peak, and then by May 1st, it's going to settle down. Now, Elena brought up some good points. You know, it could kick back around again. We are learning stuff for sure. By the way, Waylon, I have to say, because I'm really well sequestered, I'm actually more worried about bears in my neighborhood than COVID. Like, you talk about social distancing. There were bears that ripped through my backyard last night. And, you know, I have kids, and they ripped through the garbage, dude. And they like threw trash everywhere.
Yeah, dolphins in the channels of Venice. There's monkey fights
Is
in
there?
Indonesia or whatever.
Is that right?
Like there are like yeah, it's an actual phenomenon. It's there's the wildlife is coming back into areas that where they weren't seen for a while. There was even it's one of the super rare cats. It was walking freely down the roads in India. It was unbelievable. I'll send you the link later.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah, I mean, that's
Well,
part of it.
I have teenage bears in my backyard too, and they are problem with teenagers is that what's going on?
So this is if anybody's watching right now. This is Norm. This is Norm. This is Norm's April Fools.
Guys, don't trip on the wire.
This is Norm can't even through the pipelines of the Ethernet, even through the networks out there and the Wi-Fi's. Norm has to have his April Fool's pranks there.
Well,
I knew something. I knew something was coming.
Well, I was trying to wait.
I didn't think it was going to be on here, but I knew that there was going to be something going on.
Well, I was trying to wait for my buddy Gid to get on there. But, you know, you and I, we're both, that's like Christmas for me is April Fool's.
I know.
You know? And I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, because you and I both know a good April Fool's joke, you really have to be careful. Like, you tell them about that joke where you smashed the phone that year, because that was borderline.
I have a video somewhere. I wasn't even tenured at the time, so it was extra risky. Yeah, but so the students in one year, they piled the chairs up in my room. First off, that's not a prank. That's stupid. A prank actually takes some thought process to it, but whatever. There's a pile of chairs in my room, which I just put back and everything. And so there was a student at the time who I used to just like war with all the time, but we loved each other. And I said, listen, Justin, sit in my chair, and I'm not going to tell you anything aside from this, but sit in my chair. Here's a calculator. I'm going to say, get off your phone 3 times. Between the second and third time, I want you to switch your actual phone with the calculator.
Oh, yeah.
He goes, what's going on? I go, just do it. So all the kids sit down, and they had known that the chairs were in my room. So I go, listen, everybody, I just want to let you know that that little prank that you pulled got me in trouble. There's being disciplinary action taken because you all did that. And I just kept on escalating a little bit. I just got a little bit more and more like mad about it, to the point where I'm in the middle of this, and Justin is not on his phone, not listening to me. So I'm like, Justin, get off your phone. Justin, get off your phone. And on the third time, I just go over to him. I take what the kids think is the phone, take the calculator, whip it at the wall, and it just shatters into like a million different pieces. And the kids are just like,
yeah.
And I'm like, it's okay. It is okay. Because you know what? I just pranked you, and I didn't even tell my TA, and my TA, Aaron Airdrews at the time, God bless him. He goes, I thought I saw the moment that you got fired.
Yeah, we're still waiting for that. We're still waiting for that. Yeah, you were April Fool's, guys. I mean, that's like my holiday. I came up with the best April Fool's text joke, which I got you on. This is just for anybody, and you can't really use it this year, unfortunately. But the text that you send people on April Fool's is, go to the front and look out the window. It's genius, because at the very least they do it and you're like, sucker. But if they go out to the window, like what happened with you were at a restaurant and you're like, why? Are you out in the parking lot? I'm like, yeah, I'm in the parking lot. And then you like got in your car. And I was like, I'm like 5 cars behind you. We had like 6 texts back and forth. So it worked out pretty well. April Fool's is a wonderful thing. I think it's not the year for that. But did that at least look good and convincing?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was my wonderful wife, Robin, dressed in a gorilla mask and like.
Well, not convincing, but it was convincing where you were building it up to. In a gorilla mask, it's like.
Well, it was just supposed to be kind of, we don't have a bear mask. We tried. Amazon's not delivering bear masks anymore, so that's the thing. They're prioritizing diapers and stuff like that. All right, so I think you and I kind of landing on the same spot, but I think Elena made some really good points. And I definitely think depending on who you are, it's going to impact you. And it might be different nations are impacted in different ways as well. I mean, now there's a concern about what we used to call third world, developing countries, you know, and that wildlife thing you were talking about. It's interesting. Why are you saying there's dolphins in Venice? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, no, literally in the canals.
And they wouldn't be there usually because they'd be scared away from the
because of just normal pollution of factories or whatever, people being there. There's like a
boats,
whole bunch of different
gondolas.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I have to say, I've kind of even noticed it here that, like, it would be, you know, say everything just stopped and humans left, return of nature would be so fast.
Oh, Discovery Channel did an awesome thing on like what would happen on that. Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. All right.
Biggest thing was how quickly dogs would turn back into like think about a Chihuahua or think about like a wiener dog living and surviving near huskies.
Yeah, they're not going to last very long. They're not going to last very long.
Spoiler alert, pugs are gone in an apocalyptic society.
Just on a side note, Robin was telling me this very interesting ecological thing that they did out in Montana is they were getting a lot of erosion of these rivers because what they had done is they'd gotten rid of all the wolves in this place. Do you know about this?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me this, right? Robin told me this, I think. But
yeah, go ahead.
So they got rid of all the wolves because people get rid of wolves. And then the deers and antelopes and all those guys just would go down the river and eat. And they started eroding all of the soil around the river. So there was no clear boundary. They let loose like 12 wolves in this place. And it basically kept all these deer and antelope away from the river. And the river reformed itself like fast.
Yeah. Although it is, I think we should say that it is disputed how accurate that whole kind of snowballing effect was portrayed.
Okay, is that right? Are we getting controversial now? That's what we like to do.
That's what we do.
All right, now you hear the music, and you don't like this music, but I like this music, and this is our new exit music because if we use Father John, do you hear the music?
Yeah. It can go up a little bit. Just
it can go, shammy, shammy, sham. I'll just put it up a little bit. If we use Father John Misty, they're gonna mute it. Now, Waylon, why don't you? This is my own music. You don't like it, man? It's cool. It's got like a good groove.
Oh, is this your what did I say? You're on a carousel about to barf?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that's really stuck with me. Because I get it. I think it's a fair attack on that piece of music, but I still like the music. But whatever. So we're about to wrap up our second Facebook Live Free Associates thing. We're going to get smoother and smoother. I also think in the future, one guest. I don't want to rush people on and off, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I didn't want to rush Elena off. I just told my other friend that I wanted him to come on, and it just didn't end up working out. But I think one guest.
We'll have Elena on, too.
It's no question we will. So what's your plan for the rest of the day or the rest of the week, Waylon? We always air the Free Associates.
Yeah.
I didn't make you free associate. You want?
I know. We gotta plan it out tomorrow.
I can do it.
For today, yeah. Do it.
All right.
I'll get into. Oh, you want to do it now?
Yeah. You ready?
Okay.
Watch Waylon Free Associate, folks. Watch the tragedy unfold.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Free Associate.
Waves of curling irony. You go to a field of wheat. And inside of that field of wheat stands a long, attractive silhouette. You go up to the silhouette and turn it around to see an a manifestation of your own tears.
I finally figured it out. You basically are the dungeon master. Like, that's how you associate. You're a dungeon master.
Roll a D20 to survive.
That's what you are. You're the dungeon master. That's not free association, man. You're like leading me through this.
Norm, your first word was remote control.
Yeah, I failed, but so did you. You're totally right. I really got that. That was bad. But listen,
you gave yourself an A- on it.
B+. But yeah, you listen. Your point's well taken. What's your plan for the rest of the day, amigo?
So I'm gonna work on the van. I got a new 1988, a new old 1988 van. I'm having a couple of lights that are giving me some wonky stuff, but I gotta get that inspected at some point. So fixing up the van, getting it all ready, showroom quality, or at least pass inspection quality, and we'll go from there.
All right, pal. Well, you know what I'm going to do today? My wife's got a meeting later. I'm going to go to YouTube, and I'm going to get one of the best Red Sox games from 2018 and watch it.
Cool.
As if it's live. I love baseball. I know. I don't want to hear how you just respect.
You wouldn't even know if they came down with COVID because they're just zombies out there anyways. So
you just couldn't resist, folks.
Like Weekend at Bernie's.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you.
Bobbing.
So you have been listening to the Free Associates. That's the Whale Dawg over there. I'm the B.I.Q. I'm the barbarian in question. Elena Frogameni joined us today. We're going to try to keep this up, folks. We're going to try to keep it up every day. And also, we broadcast it on WMUA Amherst on the next day at noon. They're in need of programming, and we want to keep connecting the Valley. You guys know that the Political article has like 35 predictions. We only dealt with one today. We're going to just kind of knock them down as we go along. And what's your sign-off, Waylon?
My sign-off this week is if you feel sick, don't worry. It's probably not corona. It's that you're getting nauseous from Norm's music today. So.
Oh, gee. That's so unkind. We're not unkind with one another, Waylon. Like, that's why people like us, is that we don't do that.
No.
We fundamentally are kind to each other.
It's be smart, be safe, and don't be stupid.
And I'm going to say, stay calm, stay connected, and stay healthy. And thank you so much for joining us on the Free Associates. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.